Hello, BookTube. I have another starter kit for you, believe it or not. After years of drought, I've given you a daily starter kit every day. And I want to give you another starter kit today. And it's the Arthurian starter kit. And I hear some of you saying, but wait a minute, didn't you just give us an Arthurian starter kit? Well, this one was suggested by a wag. I couldn't resist since it was such a great suggestion. One of you Weisenheimer said, well, no, this isn't the Arthurian starter kit we wanted. We wanted a starter kit about authors named Arthur. And I couldn't resist, so this is your Arthurian starter kit. The first one who I want to talk about, we'll just do 10, is Arthur C. Clarke, who is famous for 2001, which was made into a famous and incomprehensibly bad movie, famous for Childhood's End, and for Rendezvous with Rama. He's I have always considered him a fairly workaday science fiction author. I know he has his fans out there, but he's never done anything really for me. He's always struck me as the type that uh, once he has a good gimmicky idea, he just goes to the manual typewriter back in the 1920s or whenever, pounds out 30 pages around that story, and sends it off to the nearest friendly editor with not really anything in the way of rigorous thought involved, I would say. I think, therefore, that he is much stronger a writer in his short stories than he is in any of his longer fiction. The 2001 sequel novels, I think, are unreadable, just unreadably dull. And I don't know when it comes to those kinds of science fiction authors who really don't have anything that you could pinpoint as a style. I'm always suspicious about whether or not they did all of that later writing themselves. You're a prime candidate for the smart nephew or the promising intern to write your work for you if you don't have a style that's difficult to mimic, right? We can't picture Michael Moorcock ever doing that. Not for any reason, but also for stylistic reasons. You can't really even picture Ray Bradbury doing it, to go back to the giants, founders of modern science fiction. You can't really picture anyone aping him successfully. Clarke, I don't know, but he has to be on the list, and he's a major science fiction author. You certainly have to read him. Then number 9 would be Arthur Hailey, who I believe is completely out of print, but who wrote gigantic airport bestsellers, including, ironically, Airport. It was a big, sudsy bestseller full of characters and the latest technology about the goings on at a major airport. And that became his style. He did one called The Money Changers, it was all about the world of high finance. He did one on the world of cutting edge, highly profitable city medicine. And he also, those and Airport, they are surprisingly better put together than you would think. Especially if you know anything about Arthur Hailey's success, then you know that he didn't need, that success did not require him to put these things together well. He could have done that without doing that. And he did. These books have some meat on their bones, is what I'm trying to say. And there's one that he wrote called The Evening News, that's a Arthur Hailey style multi-character tour through the world of journalism in his day. That's wonderful. I love it. I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a part of that world, but I loved it. Thought it was really, really good. I think it stands up to a reread. So if you encounter a fat Arthur Hailey in your used bookstore and you're wondering if he's any good, give him a try. Then number 8 would be Arthur Kessler, who's famous for Darkness at Noon. A thorny, problematic author that I have never really liked. I know that he has avid fans. I think even the avid fans see a lot of his drawbacks as a writer. But he did write a book on the Spartacus Rebellion called The Gladiators. That's a very good, very thoughtful, it's a very ingrown toenail kind of Roman history. It's not sword and sandals at all, but very enjoyable. So I can certainly recommend that. Then we have, as long as we're talking Arthurs, we should probably mention Arthur Rimbaud, who I think is far more interesting to read about than he is to read. A Season in Hell is his stereotypically referred to as his greatest work of poetry. Almost a nonsense poet, a licentious, stupid, lazy poet. I don't see the genius in his work that so many of his fans have seen over the years. I do find him fascinating, though, for having just walked away from poetry. So you create a massive, scandalous flash in society. You're the talk of 2 different continents for years. And then you just walk away completely, and as far as we know, never write another poem, nor go anywhere near that world again. That is fascinating, I think. Uh, then number 6 would be Arthur Lessinger, who wrote a work of proper history called The Crisis of the Old Order that has lots of holes in it, but is most famous for being a what detractors tend to call a Kennedy court historian. He wrote A Thousand Days, for instance, which is widely sneered at by cynics who don't know anything, as a JFK, a Camelot kind of court history. It's a powerful, muscular, thoughtful book, as it pretty much had to be. I have there's a whole other diatribe that I could give on these supposed court historians. There were famous actual court jesters in Kennedy's circle who did write books. Johnny We Hardly Knew You being the one that sold the most, written by actual courtiers, people who were there mainly to make the boss smile or to cheer the boss up or whatnot. Schlesinger was not one of those people, and neither was Ted Sorensen. So imputing that kind of lightweight vamping to a serious work of history or biography always bugs me, especially when it's been uniformly done, in my experience, by people who haven't read the books. But as I mentioned just yesterday, I think his most effective book is his biography of Robert Kennedy. I think it makes the most effective reading, probably because it's a little bit outside of the church. It's a little bit outside of explicit hymn service. That kind of weight looking over your shoulder, I think it works a lot better. So it's a definite, strong recommend. Then number 5 is Arthur Ransome, who's most famous for a series of children's books called Swallows and Amazons. They're British children's books. They've always been almost incomprehensible to me. I know they are deeply, deeply loved. I don't see why, but I wouldn't see why, right? Would I? So not only did I not read when I was a child, but I don't understand that kind of childhood bonding with a series of books. I know that it has happened with this. So maybe if somewhere down the line, some American publisher is bound to reprint Swallows and Amazons, at least one of them. And it will come to my door, and I will, in due course, give it a re-examination. And the next one, number 4, is virtually the same thing. It's Arthur Mackin, who wrote The White People or The Great God Pan, kind of a prototypical horror fantasy author that a lot of contemporary horror fantasy authors cite as one of the greatest in the genre. I have never heard that citation from a working author, whether it's Stephen King or Clive Barker or anybody, who demonstrated at all that they had read Arthur Mackin. I think he's more venerated than he is read. Again, as with Arthur Ransome, he's working in territory that I never visit and that I don't have any feel for. That kind of macabre horror fantasy has never done anything for me, no matter who it is. It's never done anything for me. And Arthur Mackin doesn't do anything for me at all. Some of the nonfiction that I've read is certainly well done, but we should best move on. But our next author doesn't serve any better. Our next author is Arthur Miller, the author of Death of a Salesman or The Crucible. And I know this is heresy because he is considered one of the great American playwrights, but I have never seen it. His stuff is so heavy-handed. It's so incredibly heavy-handed. And I'm not just talking about the on-stage drama, how you can watch Death of a Salesman and not feel like you are just being manipulated, like you were sitting on a whoopee cushion. I do not know. But I'm not talking just about the performance. I'm talking about the text on the page. Arthur Miller's famous plays were all gathered together in a beautiful, beautiful Penguin Classic Deluxe edition, a big 1,000-page thing. And when I got it in the mail, I took the occasion to reread. I sat down with it over the course of a whole week and reread all of that stuff. And it's unbelievable how much backseat driving there is. Every single gesture, every single movement, every single facial expression is carefully called for by the playwright. That is a very insecure playwright. That is a stillborn novelist. And it stifles the enjoyment for me. It really does, both on the page and on the screen. But we can move on from there to number 2. Number 2 on this Arthurian starter kit is a surprise to me. It comes from the year 1993, and it's Arthur Ashe, the great tennis player, Arthur Ashe. Either wrote or co-wrote or had written for him a book called Days of Grace. in 1993. And in 1993, I expected to dismiss it. I'd read a lot of books like that were just flyweight and nonsense. And this isn't at all. I don't think it's still in print, but if you'll come across it for 5 cents at a yard sale, don't think of it as just another lawyer-vetted, committee-written sports memoir. Days of Grace is actually very interesting. It has real weight to it, which leads me to think that Arthur Ashe wrote it himself without any help from anyone. That's having watched interviews with the man, that's my best guess as to why it reads different from all of the sports memoirs, or most of the sports memoirs that I've read. And that brings us to number one. The best Arthur, the best Arthur in this Arthurian starter kit is, of course, Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes canon, but also of lots of other books as well. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote lots and lots of stuff, and a lot of it is worth reading, and not a lot of it is read. You know the popular story about him killing off Sherlock Holmes because he wanted to concentrate on his serious writing, but hardly anybody ever actually goes and reads that serious writing anymore. A lot of it, the White Company might be out of print. And it's very, very good. I'm not here meaning to draw attention away from Sherlock Holmes, of course, since I'm in the middle of not participating in a Sherlock Holmes read-along with Matthew at Maybury Book Club as we speak, since I'm in the middle of not participating in March Mystery Madness, which is, the Sherlock Holmes stories of the founding architectural pillar of the mystery genre. I'm not meaning to draw attention away from the Holmes canon at all. I have not been making videos. Matthew at Maybury Book Club has been making a video for every canonical Sherlock Holmes story, and they've been great. I haven't been making videos for any of them, but I have been rereading them, right along with him, only as a silent partner, and enjoying all over again the weird, rough magic that they exhibit. They are quite something. Not like, I've also done a little bit of a surround sound reading. They're not like anything else that was in the Strand magazine. That is not just hindsight. If you went back in time and picked up one of those Strand magazines where a Sherlock Holmes story appeared, if you read the whole thing from front to back, it is the thing that would stand out for you. That's not just hindsight. So although Arthur Conan Doyle, as far as I'm concerned, never actually exhibited any actual writing talent, not in the polished or rhetorical sense, that is a talent. To be able to do that is a talent. To stand out like that and be so immediate. I mean, if you've been watching Matthew's videos, you realize how seldom he feels that any of these stories are dated, how seldom he feels like he's reading something from the Victorian era, because you don't feel that way when you're reading Holmes. You don't. And that's a gift on its own. So there you go. That is an Arthurian starter kit. A far less boring one than our previous Arthurian starter kit. I couldn't leave the suggestion alone, so I did it. But I'm going to wrap this up for now. So that's one more starter kit to the pile. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.